31 p.m. As a reminder, please turn off cell phones and limit any background noise. If you are on Zoom, please mute yourself and leave all questions to the end of each presentation. The roll call.
We'll now be doing roll call. When called, please say here or present. State if you are with any organization and give a brief introduction of who you are and a description of yourself. So starting, Laura Saltzman.
Hi, as a reminder, my name is Laura Saltzman. Please turn off cell phones and limit any background noise. If you are on Zoom, please mute yourself. Committee. I am a senior policy analyst for Access Living. I'm a white woman in her 30s. I have like a blue and white striped sweater, brown hair.
Myself, Lincoln Edwards. Hi, my name is Lincoln Edwards. My pronouns are he, him. I am the vice chair of the CTA ADA Advisory Committee. I'm wearing a blue, white, and red striped sweater and a yellow hat. Cynthia Fosco.
Hi, I'm present. Cynthia Fosco. I'm wearing a black long sleeve shirt and I have short brown hair and I'm in my 50s. And I also have a guide dog who's sitting at my feet. Her name's Pepper. And I do a lot of volunteer work with Guide Dogs for the Blind and Second Sense and here. So happy to be here. Happy New Year, everybody.
Sarah Luna.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Luna. I'm with the National Federation of the Blind of Illinois, and I am a Mexican-American, African-American female in my late 20s. Glad to be here with all of you.
Barbara Padilla.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I can't be there today. I'm feeling under the weather. I am a architect working at LCM Architects. I do accessibility consulting as an accessibility specialist here. I don't want to see my age, but and you can't see me, but I'm wearing a black sweater today. Thanks.
Mary Abramson.
Hi, I'm here and I'm a short white woman with dark hair, and I am here representing all people who are blind and visually impaired, and I'm at the end of my term now, so I just wanted to thank the CTA and the committee for allowing me to participate, because I truly believe that public transportation is the foundation for a lot of our independence for people with disabilities. I hope to continue to be a resource, and thank you again for letting me participate.
Doreen Bogus.
Hello, hi, this is Doreen Bogus. I'm here representing the Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities, City of Chicago. I'm a Caucasian woman, early to mid 50s. My hair is, I guess, dark blondish, brownish with some flecks of gray and white. I'm wearing it, my hair is down, and I'm wearing a light purple sweater. And I, as well, this is my last meeting. I'm, because of term limits. And I've enjoyed providing input and getting all the updates. And thank you for allowing me to take part in this committee. And look forward to whatever however I can be a resource in the future. Or resources, if we could. I'm assuming I could stay on the mailing list, but yes, so thank you.
Thank you, Doreen. Sandra Fernandez.
She's not on.
Dr. Delphine Labby.
Yes, hi, I'm here. Hi, my name is Delphine Labby. I'm a professor in the Department of Disability and Human Development at UIC. I'm a female with Caucasian female with long brown hair. I'm currently wearing a black scarf and a blue shirt.
Johnny Gonzalez.
Johnny? You're still on mute.
On to the next person.
Giselle Nunez.
Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. I am a professor in the Communication Sciences and Disorders program in St. Xavier down here on the south side of Chicago. I am a Latina, brown hair, and wearing a white sweater.
Jada Thompson.
Hi, my name is Jada Thompson. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm here representing the autistic community. I am a board member of the Chicagoland Autism Connection, and I work with Best Buddies. And I am a non-binary but femme-presenting woman in my mid-20s. I have on a pink long sleeve sweater, and I have 2 pigtails with 2 pieces of locks in front of my face. I'm happy to be here.
Zoe Lehner.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zoe Lanier. Professionally, I am an attorney at our Public Utility Commission, but I'm doing this in my personal capacity as a disability advocate. I wear hearing aids, and I'm excited to offer hearing impaired perspective to helping improve transit for everyone here. And I am wearing a black turtleneck. I got black hair, mid-20s. Oh, and I use she, her. Thanks.
Milton Lash.
Hi, Milton Lash. I'm African-American male, gray hair, just about bald. I'm here because I have a passion for ADA period. Growing up as a child, I witnessed what my dad had to go through as far as being confined to a wheelchair and seeing how much things have changed and how there's greater access, but still not enough access for those who like to travel. And I'm wearing a blue jacket and white shirt.
Up next is our CTA facilitators. Please introduce yourself and provide a brief description.
Before I move on, Sandra just joined us. So Sandra, can you please introduce yourself and give a brief description?
Hi, I'm sorry. I was trying to talk when I dialed in, but it wasn't working, I guess. Sorry. My name is Sandra Fernandez. I'm a Hispanic female, my late 20s. I have a physical disability, so I do bring that perspective for people who do have physical disabilities while using the CTA. And I think that it's great that we do have this committee so that we do have that discussion to see what changes can be made and what improvements can be made within the CTA for any person that has any type of disability. Thank you.
I want to look back to Johnny. You rejoined, yeah.
I'm really sorry about that. I just couldn't find the mute button. I'm a 50-year-old male. I'm representing disabled veterans. I'm a full-time student at Purdue getting another graduate degree. And I'm here representing veterans, and I'm Latino.
Thank you, everyone. Hello, my name is Irma Gomez. I'm the ADA Compliance Programs Manager. Sorry, I had a little brain fart. I am Latina. I am in my late 20s. I am a wheelchair user, and I am currently wearing a black sweater, blazer, brownish shirt with black hair, brown eyes, and fair skin.
Elsa Gutierrez.
My name is Elsa Gutierrez. I'm the VP of Scheduling and Service Planning. I'm a Latina, early 50s, wearing a blue jacket with a beige shirt underneath and a necklace. I have brown short hair, and Happy New Year, and welcome to the 2 members to our board, as well as thank you, Doreen and Mary, for your service and all your contributions for the committee in order for us to improve and reach, provide a better ADA experience to our customers.
And Molly Poppy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Molly Poppy. I'm the Chief Planning and Innovation Officer here at CTA. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white female in my mid-30s wearing a white shirt, and I have longish brown hair. I did want to take a moment to also allow David Poe on the call. He's here virtually to introduce himself. David is the Assistant Commissioner for Citywide Services, and moving forward, we will have CDOT present listening at these meetings. So this will be the first meeting that we will have CDOT present and listening. So we're going to take the listening part for today, and then as we move forward with future meetings, we are going to find ways to coordinate more and have more CDOT CTA presentations on the work that we do jointly, as well as opportunities for CDOT to present as well. David.
Hey everybody, I'm David Poe here on behalf of Commissioner Tom Carney from CDOT. I'm a white male with brown hair in my early 30s. I'm wearing a gray sweater and my CDOT lanyard. Honored to be here with you all today, and I look forward to hearing some updates that I can take back to our commissioner and our team here at CDOT, because making sure that our city is more equitable and accessible is our biggest priority. So thank you, Molly, for the intro, and I'll pass back over to you.
I do want to note, thank you. We really appreciate CDOT's presence, and we've pushed a lot, and I've talked about a lot. And so thank you. Really appreciate you being here and here to listen to. So look forward to the working together in the presentations.
Thanks, Laura.
There were no absences.
No absences?
We need 7 people to represent a quorum, and there are more than 7 people here. And in conjunction to that, we'll be able to vote on the minutes later in the meeting. And then, does anyone have any disability-related announcements they would like to share?
Lincoln, I just would like to quickly announce for everyone, President Carter did announce today that he is retiring as head of CTA at the end of the month. And the reason why this is news for disability or disability related news is because President Carter, as we all know, has been a huge advocate of the All Stations Accessibility Program, along with Bill Mooney, who's here in person as the Chief Infrastructure Officer, have been working to effectuate that program and have a plan to bring all of our stations to full vertical accessibility. And it's now a national program, as well as a host of other disability, accessibility related policies and programs. So just wanted to make that announcement that President Carter is no longer going to be leading the CTA at the end of the month, and there will be an interim appointment made to lead the CTA on Wednesday.
Anyone like to share any additional announcements? Anyone online?
I guess I do want to note, we really appreciate the work that President Carter put in, and especially his focus on ASAP and just viewing disability as a civil rights issue, which he's talked about repeatedly. And I know Head to Access Living is how meaningful it was that he has consistently prioritized, that they consistently prioritized, especially accessibility and capital projects at the time when other agencies didn't. So it is, yeah. Thank you. Any other comments? We're good. So this is Laura, and then if there's no other announcements, we can move on to the approval of the October 7th, 2024 minutes. They've been sent to prior to this meeting. Does anyone have any changes to the minutes? No. Then can I have a motion to approve the minutes as written? Motion. Delphina's motion. Can I have a second? Second. Okay, Zoe seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Abstain? All right, we have unanimous support for the minutes. Next is public comment. Irma, is there any public comment?
I did not receive any public comment.
No, and there's no one here to present public comment? Okay. Always support if there are folks who want to have public comment, but then next we have presentations.
So this is Lincoln speaking. First up, we have construction updates presented by Bill Mooney.
Good afternoon. I am Bill Mooney, the Chief Infrastructure Officer. I am a mid-40s male, white. I am wearing entirely brown today with brownish, grayish kind of colored hair and a beard. Oh. I'm glad to be here again this month to talk about our overall construction program and some of the progress we've been making. I will cover 4 areas this month. Our Racine ASAP project, our Austin ASAP project, Red Purple Modernization Phase 1, and the Clark and Lake Thompson Center Improvement Project, which was recently approved with a development agreement at our board. Starting at Racine, the slide I'm showing here shows a northern view of the new Racine Station House. In the view, you can see the exterior where the windows will be for the station, as well as the cladding that will provide for the upcoming installation of the prefabricated exterior panels. So this station gets cladded with a white exterior panel system that has the CTA logo embossed on it as part of its architectural enhancements. And to the right of the screen, you can see one of the most distinctive architectural features of the station, which is what we call the waterfall stairwell. It will be a glass enclosure stairwell that will come down. You can see the steel kind of sloping down. It will look like a waterfall from a distance. And then that will also create the connection access way. And at the very top of the photo, you can see the tower that is the enclosure that will facilitate the new elevator that's being installed in the station. Next photo is an interior view of the Racine Station House. This is showing those windows I mentioned in the northern view from the inside as they've recently been installed. The view is actually looking out towards where the entrance for the station house will be on Racine Avenue. And it would be just adjacent to where the stairwell and the access elevator will be in the station house. This station house is quickly coming to conclusion, and in late spring, early summer timeframe, we expect the station house at Racine to reopen. And with that, we would then close the Loomis Station House to refurbish that and make it fully accessible as well. The Loomis Station House on the opposite side of the platform is going to be a historical representation. We brought back to its original glory of 1958 as an architecturally significant representation of the period. The next photo I'm sharing is our Austin Station ADA improvement project. We have started site work and demolition at Austin. It's a very exciting time. We are waiting on our final permits coming any day to fully consider the project under construction at this point. The photo I am showing here is of street and drainage improvements. As one of the major goals of the All Stations Accessibility Project, it's to help improve the path of travel around the station as well, and not just installing elevators or other features within the station. So here we are not only expanding the footprint of the station to accommodate a ramp from street level to the station mezzanine and ultimately access to the elevator. We are also regrading the street access, and that's required us to reroute the drainage system in the street. So here in the photo, you can see a gentleman using a vibrating machine to compact gravel for the new sewer that's been installed in the street. On the next photo I have turned to is again of Austin. This is for the Mason, the historic Mason Station entrance. So back when Austin first opened, it had an auxiliary entrance at Mason Street that was closed many years ago. This entrance is actually being opened as a temporary entrance while we are doing the rehabilitation work in the Austin Station House and installing the elevator. Once the Austin Station House reopens with the full new accessible features, the Mason entrance will actually be an exit fire code release exit only. So in the photo here, you can see hand lift as well as a crane placing the roof for that new entrance at platform level on the right of way. My next photo is on the Red Purple Modernization Project. This is a really, really exciting year for this project as it comes to all of its major kind of component conclusion. In the summer, we will open the 4 fully accessible, or reopen the fully accessible stations. And the photo I am showing on the screen is of the first of those working from north to south. And this is Bryn Mawr. So Bryn Mawr ultimately has 3 locations, 2 entrances and an exit. The 2 entrances at Hollywood and Bryn Mawr will both be fully accessible. And the photo here shows one of the main hallways there and the tile cladding being installed. So most of the construction work is worked north from south. And so the most advanced portions of the project right now, if you were to walk by, you would see on the northern edges. So Hollywood, which is the furthest north entrance for Bryn Mawr, is the most furthest along of all those entrances. And then you work further south. So most of the fixtures at Bryn Mawr are in the process of being installed. This includes flooring, lighting, ceiling, grids, and then tile work. And so if you actually go by Bryn Mawr, you'll see the exterior cladding, the terracotta exterior cladding as well. Next photo is of Berwyn Station. And here you can see them beginning to install those interior fixtures with the granite flooring. So the photo shows a series of workers installing the grout around the granite tiles on the floor at Berwyn. Again, we're working kind of from the northern edge to the southern edge. Berwyn would be the next station. It is now seeing those fixtures. You'll start to see some of that cladding and the terracotta around it going in, as well as some of the interior features, such as the flooring. Also at Berwyn is my next photo is actually a canopy level. Similar to the ground floor station house improvements, most advanced platform work is happening at Bryn Mawr, but just a station down at Berwyn. Here you can see the translucent clear canopy cover being installed, as well as the cable runs for the lighting system that will be installed there. All four have actually received their concrete decks at this point, and so you're seeing mostly work above there and then finishes. Continuing to work south is Argyle. So this is the process of installing those precast panels on the platform at Argyle Station. As I mentioned, this work is substantially complete at all four of those stations, but here is an in-progress photo of that work. You can see that there is no structural canopy in place here, unlike the photo I just showed at Berwyn. Here they are installing that concrete platform edge, and then following on this, they begin to install those structural elements above. There is a crane in the photo setting one of the concrete panels with a series of workers. Moving to our final station in the corridor, this is the Lawrence Station. While it is the least improved of the four stations, it actually schedule-wise is catching up to all the other stations. They have learned a lot at Bryn Mawr and been taking those best habits and best practices they learned in the work at Bryn Mawr, and it's allowing them to accelerate these stations. All four stations will open at the same time. So as Bryn Mawr comes through its phases, all the rest of the stations will eventually catch up, and we will have the big phase change, opening up all four tracks and all four stations at that period of time. The photo for Lawrence here shows a worker in a man lift who is installing roof structural steel. So this is the framework for which the roof gets set upon and within the station itself. It looks like in the photo that there's a roof in place, but that's actually the segmental box structure above it. So that concrete you see is actually the tracks directly above the station. So. Moving on to my next topic for the month, it was requested to get a briefing about the agreement that was recently presented to our board and approved back in December for a partnership with the James R. Thompson developer for rehabilitation to the existing Thompson entrance of the Clark and Lake Station. This is a partnership ultimately that includes Google, as Google will be the future owner of the development at the Thompson Center. It's a unique opportunity for a public-private partnership in which actually a significant portion of the investment here is being made with private dollars, ultimately the developer and Google. Which I am showing on the screen is a concept floor plan for the new station layout. So one of the features of this improvement is actually realigning the way the station entrance occurs. The historical entrance for the Thompson side of Clark and Lake Station was mid-block and would end up being somewhat buried in hard to find. So if you actually were trying to navigate that station, it would between the bridge for itself and the L structure and all the street traffic, it was oftentimes very easy to walk past that entrance. It wasn't very prominent in the building. This new layout allows us to have a corner position in the building, right on the corner of Clark and Lake, and a very prominent entrance point in the building. It also allows us to facilitate better bus transfers there and somewhat better access overall. The access to the elevated structure and the subway structure will remain in its existing footprint. It will just be where the entrance doors for the station are. This entrance also allows us to separate ourselves from the building proper, where the entrance actually to the former station entrance, you actually had to enter the building and then into the station. That at times caused issues as the building wasn't always had different hours as a station, and there were some challenges around how the accessible door that went into the building was made available or was broken. This will allow for a more normal storefront for our typical station, which will make it easier for the community to have access to that station ultimately and for the flow of passengers as a whole. You'll note that the fare gate and the reference point CA looks out toward Park Street there, and the frontage is directly on Lake Street. You will come through the fare array, and then the first thing you would encounter now would be the escalators going down to the subway as they exist today. And then right around the corner from the escalators going down to the subway would be the elevators that go either to the subway or go above. That footprint of the existing units remains. Those don't change, but all 4 of those units do get rehabbed as part of the project, both the elevators and the escalators. They were already planned as part of our All Stations accessibility program to be invested in as part of the program looks at a constant renewal of the existing infrastructure. And so this was just collaboratively put into the project. Moving forward to give you kind of a sense of what the feel for the station is. This is a rendering of the new entrance. This would be looking from the entrance doorway back, see the customer assistant booth with the sightline views for both the escalators, the elevators, as well as the fare array there. And the new fare array, it's a more modern feel for the station. One of the big concerns when we partnered in the sale of the building was that if the developer took upon a redevelopment of the building, changing all the cosmetics, that we weren't left with the 1970s shag carpet. And so that's where this development agreement really came from, was an opportunity for us to see updates to those fixtures and the appearance of the station, while we also did not want to bear the burden of that cost ourselves. And so it really became a unique opportunity in that public-private partnership. This is next rendering is a view of the rehab elevator towers. This would be main floor, and you will see the same silver metallic cladding that would bring through that station entrance. But the most important aspect is not the cladding, but the fact that the units will be completely rehabbed. They will have new carriages as well as all new equipment with them. These are traction power elevators and some of the busiest on the system. While they've had a lot of work over the years, and we are blessed to have redundant elevators at this location, especially with the volume of the station, they do see a lot of use and abuse. And so a full rehab of those would be phased so that we would always have accessibility available. While the work is occurring at the station, we will also always maintain an accessible path of travel, other than some potential weekend or night closures for the station, which is not abnormal with our station projects in general, or any type of project, even track work at times where we may have to close a station. The next rendering shows the rehabbed escalators going to the elevated level, as well as one of the architectural features of the rehab station, which is a glass tile wall that will carry over from the elevated structure area all the way down to the subway. It shows a blue glass tile. It's the theme of my conversation today is waterfall features. So it carries a very similar feel to a waterfall as you carry that glass through. And this is this same waterfall featured glass tile. This is now looking at the escalators going down to the subway. I have changed slides to a new photo here. This again, these escalators will be rehabbed as part of the long-term investment in this project. And the final rendering I'm sharing here is of the elevated mezzanine area where you would have access to the elevated railroad area. Again, that access point does not change here, but it does get a cosmetic facelift as well. That is all the updates I have for this month, and I'll be glad to take any questions on what I have shared today. So.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I just had a couple of questions. The first was on the Racine station. So you mentioned that there's going to be kind of a glass walk-up that's supposed to be like wave-like. Have you considered, or is there concern about birds hitting that structure similar to them hitting like the glass at the Thompson Center? And if that does become a problem, has there been conversation about trying to put some of that coating on it?
There is not a great concern as the glass structure itself sits equal to the grade. So a bird flying would have to dive down into the highway area to make that contact. But on many of our projects, we do look at bird deterrent film, which makes it non-reflective, makes it more reflective in that sense, so it doesn't seem as transparent, which is a big issue birds in glass.
Awesome, thank you. And then my second question was about the Argyle station, because I actually used to live right by it. And I know that they have diverted it to work on that construction, but I've also noticed that when you come out onto Broadway, at least for a while, they had people pushed out onto the street, and like, I don't know if it's because they were working on the sidewalk for, I think, maybe a private property on Broadway, but then you had a pretty narrow lane to get around it. And I'm just curious if that's still the case, or if that other construction has concluded so that there's a little bit more walkway for riders who need to go down to the other station.
Trying to think when I was out there on Thursday, whether or not there was anything going.
It might be done by now. There was like a concrete barrier kind of halfway into.
So yeah, at one point in time, there was some street work going on. So the project includes resurfacing of the streets we directly impact. So we resurface and lower the streets at Argyle and all the cross streets to increase the height between the structure and vehicles passing underneath it. We also end up bringing in a bunch of utilities for those stations, and we end up doing a whole public way resurfacing there and ADA grading in the footprint of those. The corner at Argyle and Broadway, we had no direct work with them, and there was, I think, a development would this have been the southeast corner? I think there was a development going on right there, and that would have been tied to them. We have a lot of interaction with the Community Chamber of Commerce as well as the Alder there, and so I'm glad to take that back, and we can look at that as well. We spend a significant amount of time with our partners talking about the temporary paths that they put in, and I think if you look at the footprint they have at Argyle and Bryn Mawr and Berwyn, where we actually have put in a full temporary sidewalk around the station build outs right now that will eventually be replaced with the permanent sidewalk when stations are open. We've tried to make a very conscious effort that our temporary is as good as most cases permanent. So, but I'm glad to go back with our community outreach folks and touch base about that experience as well.
Thank you.
I think that's my local one. I think what you're talking about has been dealt with now.
Yes, Delphine speaking. I have two questions. One related more to the RPM, and it's when you were showing the image of the granite tile and the surfacing of the entrance. Is there in the project any planning to have built-in wayfinding tiles or support that you would not like add, like, you know, to show the path of travel, for example, another tile of color, or it just seemed like all very gray, but I'm wondering if there's any plan in that sense.
The project does not include path of travel wayfinding features tied to the flooring. It does include aspects around platform level, our typical tactile edges and such. After design advanced on RPM, we started including contrasting stair treads as one of those features we use in our station designs. We first prototyped it based on feedback from this committee at our Grand Chicago Division stations. When we did those rehabs there, we tried it at Grand. We've since included in other projects that we've gone out with, but RPM kind of was long gone and down its path there. We have been talking for a while about how to pilot a wayfinding feature in the flooring in some way, be it grooves or different texture or other things. And there's a lot of aspects of that are challenging as we consider them with our weather and snow removal and grit and some of those things. We've not come up with a great path. I know at one point the signage and wayfinding subcommittee that was trying to get off the ground as part of our ADA advisory committee was going to take forward that as an issue and actually help give us some concepts that we could look at how we could try at a couple of the stations. I know that it's also still being reconsidered as an option. So I think we would support some help on that issue. So
Yeah, because that could be like even just a color of bricks, right? Just having in the design of how the floor is being designed, that it's built in. Definitely. Yeah, I want to follow up on. What's that?
I just want, if I can follow up
Yes.
on that. I'm wondering if since, as we were building out new stations, you have these temporary stations, if that might be an opportunity, if your floor is, obviously it won't test out for if there's a winter issue, but at least for what's most effective, if it's going to be might be a cheaper option, and that way we can test out a few different.
No, I think that's a really interesting concept, and we could certainly look at that in our next round of projects.
Yeah, and it's kind of related, but it's might be just a rendering, but the new elevated mezzanine at the James R. Thompson, consider the non-glare surface, right? Because in that picture, it seems like it's that very glary kind of, and I'm wondering how it is in also.
No, our flooring standard is very specific.
Okay.
Of durability. There's only a certain number of materials you can use actually in our flooring standards, and it does deal with glare as an issue. Architects especially tend to be a little more flash in the appearance.
Yeah. Excellent.
I have a couple of questions if anyone else. Okay, this is Laura. And I would like to say I have noted the CTA stations by RPM have been very good about snow clearance. However, because I think there's so many different folks have been doing new construction projects around the stations. If the contractors could actually, if you could ask them to report, because maybe those companies will listen, or if CDOT can look at enforcing, because there's some wide swaths of, there's some very large parts of sidewalks that have not been getting cleared that are the new developments because it's under construction and there's no one, they're not vacant. And it really is a huge problem. For instance, for getting to the bus right by Berwyn, one of the sidewalks is just completely impassable, and there's a ton of disabled people that live right by there. So if you could just tell the.
I think we have, and I think some of you who have been in the committee for a while have met Jeff Wilson, who's a member of our RPM team that works directly with community relations there. And so I'll flag it for Jeff in their rounds to make sure that if we see neighbors that aren't being very neighborly, we can work with the alder, especially because we do have a lot of, Jeff speaks to the alder's office almost daily to help encourage them to help put some pressure in there as well. So.
No, I'm raising it because I think that I have noticed that when those issues have been raised, there is a follow through. So that's.
No, so we were glad to partner on that as well. So.
And then my other question was, so because there has been that issue sometimes where CTA stations are located in other buildings of the accessible rights, there's also merchandise mart is a huge issue. Are you guys looking at least moving forward in your contracts or trying to make sure as much as possible that CTA has control over some of those doors? So maybe it's too complicated. I don't know.
So I will tell you, Bill Mooney's personal opinion on this issue is I engage in these aspects, and I won't speak for the agency as well. I like the controlled ownership of the real estate. So as we engage in these partnerships and development deals, I think you'll see, as you see with this footprint, we like to be able to stand on our own regardless of the facility itself. So I think, this part of the change of this footprint, it gave us a little bit more isolation from the building while being part of that historical element, while being able to serve the businesses, being able to serve Google and being able to continue to serve our customers in downtown Chicago there. We are able to do that 24/7 regardless of what goes on in the building. So I think as we've looked at other partnerships, as we move forward and other opportunities, that's a real concern of ours and one that we've tried to facilitate for.
Thank you so much.
I have a question before we step away from this. I'm just wondering, when these projects are done, is there going to be an opportunity for us to walk through like we did? Was it Western we met at?
Damon
Green.
Yeah. Do something like that before it actually goes into full.
I think we're all more than open to schedule something before the open.
Nice. Yeah, because that was really helpful. I really enjoyed doing that.
I know on RPM, we've done some tours even in mid-construction because it is a very, very long project, right? For many of these station projects, maybe 18 months, start to finish. That is half of the RPM project in some cases. I think we welcome that as we move forward with ROE as well to be able to facilitate some aspects of that as well.
Great. Thank you.
Any question?
This is Doreen. I'm OPD. I know I won't be on the committee at that time because this is my last meeting, but part of the benefit to doing those walkthroughs, we've done them at some stations, we've done them on buses, train cars, is to provide feedback to help enhance accessibility or, look at functional accessibility. And so I would hope that the timing would be where recommendations, if agreed upon, could still be implemented.
I think, part of the goal when we did these walkthroughs with RPM earlier on was to gather that while we were still developing kind of the final designs and those aspects. So I think we covered a lot of that. I think going forward and these other ones, we can certainly look at those. And as I offered with the red line extension, there would be an earlier on conversations.
And I would note,
and I know too, sometimes it has to do with signage also. And so I'm thinking, obviously construction, yeah, you're past that point. But when it comes to like signage or things that aren't so much built in, I don't know, like, Irma, has the goal of those walkthroughs changed since? I know that you were, that might have, some of the walkthroughs might have been before your time here with the CTA too. But has the goal changed? Is it no longer, providing feedback for accessibility enhancement, or is it more familiarity now?
No, the goals haven't changed. So yes, we still have like all of the feedback that you all gave prior to my time, and also the ones that we've done. I believe we've done 2 at least on Western, and then the Damon one. So yeah, I know Western, that one was actually ahead before construction even started. Damon was a little bit after the fact, but that's because construction timeline, and we were in a crunch for to open up before the DNC. So
right, and that's why I was wondering if maybe the goal had shifted. It, we went from providing feedback to be implemented to familiarization and being able to like educate others with disabilities on things that sometimes the average person wouldn't think of in terms of accessibility. Like when you're telling people about the station, like, oh, and by the way, you know what I mean? So, okay. So it sounds to me like it's kind of both depending on timing. Is that correct?
Yeah, Doreen, this is Elsa, and I just wanted to add, it just depends on the phase of where that is in construction. Our goal is always to provide it a little bit after the design, so that input can be included and could be modified if it's feasible. But then where it depends where the committee was in terms of where that construction phase was. I think more recently, because we were closer to the opening of the station, it was more reviewing it once it's opened. But the goal is to really start it from the very beginning in the design phase of the projects. These construction projects, as you know, are long because of when funding is received and so forth, but we want to engage the committee at every stage so that feedback is captured early and can be considered as they're putting the design in place. Obviously, during construction, it's a little bit harder to make major adjustments. And then at the end, it's really just to see where the construction is, as it's ready to open. And so some of, like you said, the wayfinding, those are, easy to adjust if they placed the exit arrow in the wrong place and so forth. And so that's also good feedback for us to get as we get ready to open it. So I would say we still want to involve and engage the committee at every phase, and it just depends where it is on the construction piece.
Right. And even though we can't always do physical, tours, so to speak, at the beginning of the construction phase, it's still good that at all of these meetings, we're still given a virtual step-by-step to provide that feedback from that standpoint along the way. So, and even if, the circumstances are such that tours are not able to be given until, couple days around implementation, still the familiarity for the committee, as well as for them educating the public, as well. That's still beneficial as well. But so thank you very much.
Questions online?
You. Next, we have ridership updates presented by Kara Bader, VP of Innovation, and Scott Wainwright, Director of Ridership Analysis.
Good afternoon. My name is Kara Bader. I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Innovation at CTA. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white woman in her late 30s with medium-ish red hair, and I'm wearing a white shirt with blue stripes.
Sure. My name is Scott Wainwright, Director of Ridership Analysis and Reporting, white male in my 40s. Hair is mostly gray, a little brown left hanging on. I'm wearing a dark suit.
So today we're going to cover a look back of trends in 2024. And then though we don't have full year-end data yet for the year, I think we have some key themes that we've been sharing with our executive.
It's not sharing screen, sorry.
Oh, hang on. There you go.
There you go.
All right. We'll share some themes that we've been sharing with the board and other stakeholders and have time for questions. Overall, these themes show a strong ridership return in 2024, especially on the bus during the evening peak and on weekends. Though our overall ridership recovery compared to 2019 continues to lag our peers. Service frequency and reliability were key investments that brought riders back, and we'll share some data that shows that those service investments have been boosting ridership. We'll also look through the number of active Ventra accounts, which is showing that the same number of riders are riding our system today as pre-COVID, but riders are riding less. And then we'll dig into some trends with our ADA ridership and our active ADA Ventra accounts, both of which have lower recovery overall, but are seeing year-over-year increases for the first time since COVID, and perhaps is a trend on the upswing that's positive to highlight. And so this slide was predominantly a text summary. We'll get into some charts. And so though I said at the top, CTA's overall recovery has been lagging peers, we've been leading our peer group in year-over-year growth in the last year. So this is a bar chart that looks at year-over-year ridership growth as a percent basis, year-to-date 2024. And this data was through, I believe, October 2024. It shows that WMATA was the highest growing agency in DC, but CTA was just behind it in second at 12% year-over-year growth year-to-date. And CTA is leading SEPTA, LA Metro, MBTA, and MTA. And so a few of those agencies that are overall recovered at a higher rate than us have had much lower year-over-year growth in the last year. Like I said, though it's been reported have lagged some peers overall, we wanted to take a look at the longer term peer story to show that just looking at a comparison to 2019 is not necessarily the easiest baseline to make a comparison to. So on this chart, you see a very complicated set of squiggles with CTA in an orangish red line, and then our peers MBTA, MTA, Metro in different colors. And really what it's showing is that from 2016 into 2019, most of our peers also showed a declining trend in ridership, many for different factors, some for similar factors, things like cuts in services, competition from the emerging rideshare industry,
change in demographic patterns in each of these regions, as well as our own. And then you see a sharp decline in early 2020 and a recovery from 2020 to 2024. In looking at CTA compared to peers, you see that CTA had a deep decline like most of our peers, but has been slightly slower to recover. Some of our peers bounced back quickly, but have leveled off more in the last couple of years. And so that's all to say, looking simply just at 2019 is not an easy comparison because all transit agencies were facing a complicated story coming into the pandemic. We weren't necessarily on even footing, and we aren't necessarily on even footing coming out. But at CTA, we've been heartened by the positive trends in the last year. So looking at our ridership retention on bus versus rail compared to 2019, this slide is showing two different lines, a green line that shows our percent retention for bus and a purple line that shows our percent retention for rail. Though once again, it's pretty squiggly as we look at month over month differences. The overall trend is up, looking at the past year to year and a half, starting in January 2023 through November 2024. And then there's a dotted trend line for each, showing that the recovery on bus is happening slightly more quickly than the recovery on rail, where in both we end up around 60% overall retention for rail at the end of 2024. And we're getting closer to 80% overall retention in our trend line for bus at the end of 2024, with that bus trajectory being slightly more quick. And so we mentioned some of these emerging ridership trends. One is that weekend ridership recovery on both bus and rail is outpacing weekday recovery. We see 14% year-over-year growth on weekends compared to 11% on weekdays. And then our evening PM peak ridership growth is outpacing our overall growth as well as AM peak. And so what you see on this slide is a chart that looks at bars by different hour groupings of the day, such as midnight to 3 a.m., 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., 6 to 9, and onward. You can see from these hour groupings that not only are we looking at that 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And 6 to 9 as standouts from a percent basis, 12% and 15% compared to that 11% overall. There are also really high volumes of added rides year over year. This next slide looks at the ridership outcomes year over year, looking at groups of bus routes that got service additions in each of our scheduling picks in 2024. It is a comparison of two different sets of bar charts and one bar-like line chart, for lack of a better word. On the left side, you see a comparison in total rides, this year being the black bar and last year being the gray bar. In the middle, you see total rides added year over year in a green bar. And then towards the right, you see what that nets out to in year over year percentage growth in a green line with a ball marking the percentage. And so you can see that the bus routes that received no change in service this year had 10% year over year growth in ridership. But the bus routes that saw added service in the spring pick saw 15% year over year growth. We saw a consistent trend with the summer pick seeing 15% year over year growth, and the fall pick seeing 14% year over year growth. And since our winter pick just took into effect, we don't yet have data that represents service changes with the winter pick that happened a few weeks ago. But overall, I think that the outcome is pretty clear that where we've added service, so that means closing some of those headways, more frequency, paired with some reliability improvements, the ridership gains have been significant and outpacing the trend overall. Now we have a line chart that shows two different lines. One is the percent comparison to 2019 of just the number of active Ventra accounts, and that's a light blue line. And then a slightly darker blue, we see the total rides from those active Ventra accounts.
And what you can see is towards the end of 2024, we finally surpassed full 100% recovery of just the active number of accounts on our system. And so we're glad to see that riders are fully back. And I think that's something that has been reported as we've lost riders to the system. But as we've changed over the last couple of years, we have new people in, we've welcomed riders back. We're at that same number of total accounts. But at the same time, we're still only averaging 70% rides across those accounts, which just goes to show, as has been widely reported, that many riders are riding less. And as we've already covered, time of day and days of week have changed. And so we're really focused on how the service that we'll be providing in 2025 and beyond adapts to the new trends of those riders, how we can welcome them on the system and deliver a service that meets their needs.
And I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about just the ADA component of our ridership here. So we'll have 3 slides, and there's 3 different pieces to this that we want to discuss. One is we're going to look at the number of active permits. It's the number of people who are registered and are eligible to take a ride. That doesn't mean that they actually took a ride, but that they did actually go through the trouble of registering and can take a ride if they choose to. Then we will look at the active number of customers. So if you have someone who rides very frequently, one person who rides very frequently and another person who rides only once, that's 2 customers. And so we will look at that, and then we will look at their total number of ridership. So the overall takeaway for all 3 of those metrics we'll see is that they have all 3 have basically turned a corner, where we have been seeing long declines ever since COVID until recently. And so now it's new that we're now seeing year-over-year increases on all 3 of these measures for the first time since COVID. So as Kara mentioned earlier on, the number of ADA customers and ridership as measured by their pre-COVID levels still lags the system. ADA customers are only at about 60% of 2019 levels, while she just showed that we're at about 100% for the mainline system. And then ridership is at 50% of 2019 levels for ADA ridership. Though at the system level, it's about 70% for ridership overall. Now looking at this at this table that we're looking at right now, kind of going over what's in here, you've got the permits or the enrollments by the program through RTA. So in the bottom right, we see that the total number of permits in Q4 increased from 318,000 in 2023 to 330,000 in 2024. Now, that does include some of the senior reduced fares and senior ride frees, which kind of are separate from the ADA rides. But so if we look at them, the ADA related rides specifically, we can see what's happening there. The line on the bottom shows that the ADA paratransit increased from 55,200 in 2023 to 61,700, roughly about a 10% increase there. Looking a little bit higher, we see the disabled ride free that increased from 34,000 to 37,200. And then we had the disabled reduced fare, which is the top line. This one did see a net increase or decrease between 23 and 24. But when we add these all up together, it is a combined increase year over year. And the next slide, we're now going to look at how many people were actually active on these accounts. So the total number of customers. And this chart here basically goes from January 2023 on the left through December 2024 on the far right. The blue vertical bars represent the monthly active accounts. We notice that there is some seasonality in this data with the winter months being lower than the rest of the year. There are about 28 to 30,000 active ADA accounts in the last 3 months, 30,000 in October, about 28,000 in December. We are likely to see a dip another 1,000 or so in January this year as we did last year. There's a straight and horizontal black line going through the middle of the chart. This is the break point for positive or negative year-over-year changes. There's also a green squiggly line going from left to right on this chart. This represents the year-over-year change. So the green squiggly line is below the solid black line from January 2023 until October 2024, meaning the year-over-year change was negative throughout this time. If we expanded this chart back to COVID, we'd see the green line below the black line the whole time. we're losing customers. But finally, in October 2024, the green line goes above the black line, meaning we had year over year, our first year over year positive change in the number of active accounts this past October. We added customers who took at least one ride. October was up about 5% year over year, and this was followed by positive year over year growth in November and December as well. So you can see that we essentially turned the corner in October of this year. Hopefully this positive trend continues into this new year. Going on to the next slide, we're going to look at basically the same type of information for just the ridership itself. So it's the same basic chart where we have blue vertical bars, a straight horizontal black line, and a green squiggly line. The difference again here is that this is the total ridership instead of the unique number of customers. We do see again that the ridership is a bit seasonal, like the customer count was, with lower ridership in the winter months. ADA rides were between 830,000 and 1 million monthly rides over the last year, with September peaking at about 1 million and December having just about 900,000. On this chart, we see the green squiggly line moves from being below the straight black line, being above the straight black line starting at about March of 2024, meaning we changed from losing ridership to gaining ridership in March last year. ADA-related rides were up about 8% year over year in the fall. This was right in line, basically turned the corner. What this suggests is that the riders began into the system. So we can't say for sure, but I do suspect that that this change where we've now reversed the negative trends, positive trends, is probably due to some of the increases that we put in the bus service, where we saw ridership certainly reacted positively on a system-wide basis. And so I believe that this is probably what's driving some of this change right now, this ADA group.
And then finally, we'll do a preview of the year ahead. This final slide recaps the 2025 ridership forecast that was included in our budget that was just recently passed. And that forecast is done on a retention to 2019 basis. As you can see, in 2020, we were actually at a 43% retention for our 2019 year. Overall, that is the blue series of bars. Bus ridership is shown with the orange series of bars, which was 51% in 2020. And rail ridership is in the gray series of bars, which was 35% in 2020. The chart then shows the actual ridership across the system, bus and rail, in 2021, 2022, 2023, and our forecast for the end of the year of 2024, as well as our forecast for 2025. Through those years, you can see bus, rail, and the system steadily increasing. Our 2024 forecast shows that we project the system will be at 70% retention overall, with bus at 79%, and rail at 59%. And our preliminary projection for 2025 shows a significant jump to 80% system-wide retention overall, with a 90% retention on bus ridership and a 68% retention on rail ridership. And this is an aggressive jump from 2024 to 2025, largely due to the significant investment in service that we've made in the last year, and projected additional service additions that will come in 2025, particularly on our bus system. We've seen that riders have responded steadily to those increased services, as have riders in other peer cities where services have been added relatively rapidly. And so we are projecting that that service will buoy ridership back to the system, though it is an aggressive projection overall. And we'll continue to be coming back to this group, as well as our board and other stakeholders, as we see those service additions, particularly, as I mentioned, the winter pick, which is yet to be represented, start to pay off in terms of ridership.
Excellent. Thank you again for your presentation. I had a quick question on the Q4 permit chart. So I'm seeing this interesting pattern where there actually seems to be a little bit of an increase for a few of these in like 21, and then it drops again in 2022. Do you have any sort of context for what may have caused that bump? And is there anything that can be extrapolated from that, like lessons learned? Or was this maybe just like vaccines coming out and then people getting out a little bit more. Do you just have any idea of why that happened?
Yeah, so we don't track, I mean, this somebody else keeps this. These are the RTA numbers, and they are managing this program, I think. What went into that is really hard to say. This is kind of like in the throes of COVID, and everything was very difficult to understand in terms of what was going on. So many different things, so many variables at play here. But so we did not have a full understanding of what was behind changes in the enrollment at the time. I think when we were looking at the ridership, it was very clear that the ridership had dropped by half. So it just looked like maybe there's some kind of a cycle in terms of renewals, et cetera, that goes on, and that people just weren't anticipating needing the permits as they were beforehand. So, so we hadn't looked into that, but I certainly appreciate the idea of what else might have been going into that and what can we look at going forward. So we can reach out to the RTA folks and see if they have any additional.
Sorry, I would note as well, because I moonlight also on the fair system side. So the way the renewals work, there's a two-year renewal. So some of this is a little bit cyclical, as where someone could have applied before COVID, or I think we all had a lot of hope in the first 6 weeks of COVID that it was not going to be something that was around for a long period of time. So I think that there's also that as well. So I think actually when you start to look at 2022, that's where you kind of see, maybe not that hope died, but like we all kind of got to the point where we recognized, I'm sorry, Scott. real fast. But where we sort of all recognized maybe this was not going to be going away as fast as we all would. So I believe that probably some of this is a little bit cyclical just in the renewal process of the fare cards.
Yeah, and this is also, I wanted to add that RTA also pivoted to a point where they put in a new system because some of their mailing wasn't being reached and, they weren't getting it back. So then they did an online, together a whole online option that currently has been successful in getting more enrollment than they have in the past. So, that kind of occurred around the same dates, but I think like Scott and Molly said, there's no like one thing. It was just a lot of stuff going on at the same time, and RT trying to be reactive in terms of how do we bring back the customers who still want to use transit in a way that is more efficient, because they weren't really as many people as they wanted to through the whole just the mailing process and the coming in the office, because coming in the office was not kind of a thing during this time periods. Thank you.
So, sorry, question. This is Laura. I feel like the big, the big gap here is rail. And so I have a couple questions related to, the increase, if the 59 to 68% increase means that there's going to be increased service levels. And if there is, as is perpetually talked about, anything planned to ramp up train operators, right? Because that is the biggest issue, as I understand it, for getting service levels back. So what the plans are for getting more additional rail operators.
Yeah, so we've hired more than 200 RTOs, rail operators in 2024. We do plan to continue with an aggressive hiring strategy in 2025. I'm not saying that 200 is our target, but it is planned to be aggressive. There's also other needs that will be occurring in the training schedule for rail, from manager training to what we call second qualification training for folks that will require additional qualifications to run the railroads, and then clerk training and other safety training. So there will be ongoing aggressive hiring that we do anticipate in 25, probably not nearly as aggressive as we had in 24, but it will still be aggressive. And from a service perspective, we plan to continue to look at the service trends that we are experiencing, or ridership trends, that we are experiencing on rail. And what we sort of seen and what Scott and his team have analyzed is, we really do see bus coming back at a high trend, and rail, if you look at it, it is marginal growth. It is still some growth in ridership, but it's not huge growth in ridership. And frankly, that's true. And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, that's true pretty much for every transit agency in the country. Every transit agency is not seeing that level of ridership return on rail as they are on bus. And so that sort of marginal recovery is reflective of ongoing patterns that we see around people returning to the office, and other just sort of changes that we're starting to see, but it is not reflective of what we sort of anticipate a return like we have on bus. Scott, is there anything I missed? But I know you these numbers.
No, I think that's right. I think the idea here is that rail is a much larger share of rail ridership is dependent on commuting, right? The purpose for traveling on rail is a much larger share for commuting purposes. So people working from home a lot more. There's just a lower number that rail can hit overall. That and buses supporting rail to some degree, but it's doing a lot more. It has a very much more diversified purpose. So that ridership has been able to come back at a higher clip.
Yeah, and that's great. It's just that it's also striking just coming right after the infrastructure thing. I think for when we're pouring in money to stations, making sure that the trains that there is a reliable service, because just there are a range of disabilities where like waiting around, or if you're not sure if a train is coming, it really is like not great, which I know everyone in this committee knows, and I'm just sharing it because, I think making sure folks outside this, folks outside the folks who attend this meeting are like clear on the fact that that is important, and making sure that training ramps up and everything that is required to train those operators is being done. So get off my soapbox now.
I have a comment or a question. First, I think those numbers show well how better for street Chicago should continue and be better for the bus, because if they're reliable, people take them. So that's just right. I think it's a great opportunity to push forward to ask for more money for those things and change. But my question was also if you are able to look at the difference in the rail use is it certain lines, like, because we know that many lines goes to the loop, but some of them are also maybe used more between, I'm thinking, I live in Wicker Park, and you can tell that between Logan Square and Division, there's a lot of people that use the train for neighborhood and less maybe commuting, like you were talking about. So I'm wondering if you have those kind of data of like from where to where the people go, and is there a change? Because if it's not for commuting, how can you attract back your rider to be like, hey, the rail is also for local or entertainment or other kind of like goals?
Yeah, so we do have, we do track very closely the number of entries at each station. We are looking to get the destination data as well coming into the agency here. We've got a vendor that we're working with right now. We're hoping to get some test data from in the next few months. It'll be a little bit down the line where we can actually get that into production, but to actually sort of track the endpoint and sort of monitor how that has changed over time. So we will be able to have that data to share as well.
I think one thing I would add is sort of thinking about specific lines, to your point, branches that have shown strong recovery on a percent basis, Pink Line especially, which I think, if you are familiar with the Pink Line communities, a lot of inter-neighborhood travel as opposed to just downtown. And then that feeder into the green pink segment of West Loop to downtown, where we know that there's also a big change and increase in the number of amenities on that sort of West Loop to downtown corridor pre to post COVID. And so when you think about those trends of more recovery in the PM peak on weekends and how our rail system can evolve to meet them, I think we are seeing some of that change in pattern. And like Scott said, we're trying to beef up our tools to better understand that.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, I gather that there is some ability to like model. I know it's hard to track bus stop boarding because you have to like guess at it because of how Ventro like works. But I'm wondering, especially with the CDOT having made more bus stops accessible, if there's an ability to like look at if we have seen any ridership changes, or if we're going to see any ridership changes either in general or specifically with ADA changes with those bus stops. And if not, I think making sure we, it might take time, but it feels like a question that would be interesting to look at.
Yeah, we will eventually be able to do that.
Perfect.
It's a little more difficult to track that stuff down at the bus level, but that is data that we had.
Yeah. As long as CDOT's here for me to lobby to make more bus stops accessible, want to make sure anything to encourage.
Big priority for CDOT.
Perfect. Good to hear.
We did make the announcement at the end of the year, CTA and CDOT, that we had made 100 bus stops accessible. So that is something that we continue to work on every year with CDOT and have identified a list based on boardings that we know based on the permits that you see here, you have disabled or free and disabled senior, looking at those permits, looking at ridership.
It might be also then a way to look at, we have made more stops, the city's made more stops accessible, but where there might need to be increased pushes for benches is another thing that data might be used for. As a person with a physical disability who could use benches sometimes, and sometimes it is a real problem for bus riding, so.
And also just wanted to add a tidbit of personal experience. There's been times where we get to a bus stop and it's sort of like a makeshift stop in a way of, it'll be like grass patch, sort of gravelly, sort of small walkway, and was just curious on like if there's any intent on, I guess, regulating the sort of like space minimum when it comes to bus stops.
Yeah, so we, so the traffic engineering, traffic planning team does work regularly with CDOT on requirements, especially for when there's construction work. I don't know if you were talking about Stony Island, if that's where you were riding. But I took a guess because we know we've had a lot of some challenges there. So we do work with CDOT to make sure that there is, if we're ever going to have to take out a bus stop for any construction purposes, that there are fully accessible replacement stops, if you will, so that it is something we consider and work on. And if you ever do run across something that you don't think is sufficient, please do let myself, Irma, Elsa know, and we will work with CDOT. And CDOT's always been a good partner in correcting that. Oftentimes, it might be a construction group that's just, not aware or something.
I have a question. Yeah. It's in regards to your evening PM ridership growth. My question would be, how is the CTA using those metrics to address accessibility to ensure safety and reliability for ADA customers, passengers?
Yeah, so one of the things that we continue to work on and continue to focus on is how do we address security, not just for ADA passengers, it's really for all passengers that we hear security is a top priority for them. And so one of the ways that we've done that is we've recently launched the Chat with CTA feature. That's just a feature available right on the CTA website that you can report an issue, everything from smoking on the train to we get instances of I've been passed up by a bus. And so that's a really good way for people to communicate with us and help us take action. As we move into 25, we're looking to continue to effectuate action on those. Right now, it really is kind of a reporting metric for then us to determine how we deploy security guards, how we might deploy CPD officers based on feedback. We're really trying to work into something that's more proactive. So that's something that we're working to in 25. And then additionally, what we're working on in 25, there's been $3 million, a little over $3 million has been dedicated from the board for different security initiatives. And that we are working on a plan with the board on what that $3 million will be spent on. And so expect to hear more. And I know your chair, Laura, has been very active in looking for alternatives to security that don't security alternatives that don't necessarily involve a badge and a gun. So it's something that we're going to continue to work on and hopefully bring to the board in the coming months. So it really is security is not just a concern of the disabled, but we understand that there's more vulnerabilities there. And so it is something that we need to take seriously.
Yeah. Follow up, where is there marketing or information? Because I only know it because I watched the videos, but I haven't seen any marketing about it. For the average bus rider, train rider could just look up and read it like, oh, I didn't know that, because they have their phone. Most people do it right there.
Yeah.
I just haven't seen it.
We are working on a comprehensive marketing campaign for the Chat with CTA feature that we hope to launch in the first quarter. I think we also want to stay in sync with some of those initiatives Molly mentioned, where we're going to be piloting more sort of rapid response to things that are reported. But we'll probably be doing not only digital ads, maybe some paid social media, but looking at car cards and bus identifiers. And then at the same time, we recently have been piloting and will scale in 2025 an instant rider feedback survey. And so that's like a QR code that you can scan from a sticker on the bus or train and more or less say I had a good ride, bad ride, neutral. And those stickers will also include information about the Chat with CTA feature so that riders understand if they're seeing something, they can report it to us. I think sometimes as we all know, when we're working out the kinks of something, we want to kind of like keep it in that middle space of use it, tell us if it's working. And I think 2025 is definitely a year of, we feel like it's working and we want to make sure that everyone knows it's available to them.
And sorry, I feel like we're just piggybacking all over the place, but this is something separate on the survey that's also at stations as well. And something we heard from all the board members was there was concern at stations about bench availability and wayfinding. So there is a question in the station specific QR code survey asking about benches and things like that. We don't have one for bus stops. There's 11,000 bus stops. That's a lot for us, Laura.
I was going to say thank you, but now. Well.
I do have a question though, follow up on the accessibility. You showed, I think it's 2 meetings ago, you showed up like the choice on Google to say, should we show the bus stop fully accessible, not fully, or like we kind of gave, where are you with that? Because why I'm asking that is I recently traveled, I don't remember the city, and in the bus, there was an announcement when the bus stop was not accessible, and it would say this bus stop is not accessible. So telling the people if they want to get out there, that might not be the best stuff. I felt it was funny because they didn't say which one was accessible, but yeah, so that made me think about that, and I was wondering where it was.
Well, so this is also, we're still working through that. Our task force just is going to be meeting again in this year. And so we hadn't quite made a decision. We took in the feedback that was received after the meeting, but we haven't made a decision in terms of the GTFS because we also needed to work with our vendor to see. I think we have basically 1-0 and there was a gray area. And so we wanted to see how to incorporate that. And we're talking with them on that and then going back to the task force to kind of narrow down the options to see which one best fits. So it's still a work in progress, but a decision hasn't been made yet in terms of how we're going to move forward. But it's something we're going to be working on in 2025 with the GTFS and how that's outlined. And then I also wanted to add in terms of safety and security, one of the programs that we do have is Refresh and Renew. Some of our stations were not, as I would say, well lit or very fresh. And there is a program on our website that shows all the stations and shows the before and after. And just seeing that before and after, you can really see the difference of both what the LED lighting does to the station and then also just a fresh paint of white so that when you're walking through, you're visible. I think UIC Halsted was one of those where you can really kind of identify where the station is, well lit, you're seen as well. I know that's just an aspect of security, obviously security waiting on the platform as well as security on the train or on the bus, but also look at our Refresh and Renew program. And we're continuing that this coming year as well to kind of address more stations. Every year we can only cover a certain number and we want to continue to add, but if you have feedback or if there's a particular station of concern, that feedback over to us so that we can make sure we can let our infrastructure folks prioritize that in their list for this year.
Any questions from members online? Hearing
no,
none.
thank you.
Karen Scott, thank you.
Thanks.
Coming up, we have an update on customer feedback presented by Catherine Kennelly, the General Manager of Customer Service.
Thank you. My name is Kate Kennelly. I am the General Manager for Customer Service. I am a Caucasian female, brown hair, glasses, wearing a black and white top today. I was asked to just give a quick overview of our department, what we do in customer service, and how we are handling customer feedback. So the main things I want to go over is a little bit about us, what we do in customer service, how we're handling customer feedback. And then also talk about some trends in the complaints that we've been seeing. So customer service currently is staffing 13 full-time positions. We have 3 different business units. Call center operations takes phone calls from customers. We also have our feedback programs handling inbound email communications, and then also second floor reception here at headquarters. Our primary responsibility, we're handling intake of a variety of issues, including general questions, complaints, commendations, refund requests, as well as maps and brochures. We also are performing analysis of trends, sharing customer feedback within the CTA so that issues that are reported to us can get addressed, and also to help inform business decisions. We have a number of different communication channels available. The first via phone at 888-YOUR-CTA is answered by our call center representatives. We can also be reached at that same number through the 711 relay service. We also have email through a web form on our website, transitchicago.com/contact, or also directly to feedback@transitchicago.com. And then also talked about today is the chatbot, which is new, available on our website, on every page of our site, as well as on that contact page. So a little bit about how feedback is handled at CTA. So all feedback we receive is routed to the appropriate garage or department for review and for follow-up action. For feedback that comes in via our traditional channels, our customer service rep enter the concerns into the city's 311 Salesforce system. Customers requesting a return phone call. Those complaints are also entered into SharePoint and referred to the responsible management at the garage or the department and that's over that responsibility for follow-up. Garage management will determine any necessary corrective action, contact the customer within 3 days, and close that complaint in SharePoint within 14 days. The complaint will remain in open status in the 311 system used by the customer service reps until garage management notifies us that the customer has been contacted. And even though I say all of that, even if no callback is requested, the concern is still sent to the garage or department to interview the operator or determine any necessary corrective action. And then just a brief overview. I know we've already talked about chatbot, but this is a great option for reporting real-time issues, as in most cases, these concerns are sent directly from the chatbot to the department that can address it. And since launch, we have received an average of 4 ADA-related chats per week. And that kind of takes me into the next kind of transition over to our complaint trends. So on this slide here, I have two graphs. The one on the left with the blue bars is just really showing year-over-year complaint trends for ADA-related complaints. So you can kind of see in 2019, we had close to 900 complaints, which kind of dipped throughout the pandemic. And then the last 2 years are kind of back up near that 900 number. And consistently, the percent of complaints, ADA complaints make up about between 3 and a little over 4% of the complaints received by the department. On the right side here, we have another graph. Same information, just kind of broken out by the top categories that we often see. And the main takeaway here is although the complaints kind of change over time, have gone down and gone back up, pretty consistently, the two issues that we see most often, or that reported to us most often, are employee behavior and pass-up complaints. And those are shown in the blue and the orange boxes on the right side. I want to dive a little bit more into the 2024 trends. For last year, we had a little over 19,000 total complaints. A little over 800 of those were ADA related, which is about 4.4%. Digging into those a little bit more, about 85% of complaints, ADA related complaints, occurred on the bus system, 15% on rail. And that's kind of just shown graphically at the bottom. Got a pie chart on the left-hand side showing the breakdown. And then on the right-hand side, it's a bar chart showing the breakdown over the course of the year, broken out by quarter. So a little bit lower in the colder months in Q1, a little bit increase in Q2, Q3, and then trending back down in Q4. And then this is a little bit of a deeper dive here into the complaint categories for 2024. So just like we saw in that earlier slide showing year over year, employee behavior was our top category in 2024. It's about 30% of our complaints. That was a total of 247, or about 20 per month, mostly bus, but some on the rail side as well. And passing up disabled passenger is our next biggest category. That accounted for 21%. It's about 117 or 10 per month. 79% of those are on bus, 21% on rail. And then the last category I just wanted to call out here is the green box. It's 14% for ADA compliance, which is about 10 per month. And so this is really kind of a catch-all category of complaints that don't kind of fit in another category that we have in the system. So you'll see a lot of these situations have to do with a customer not being assisted as expected, or an operator not assisting with securing a wheelchair or something along those lines is typically what those comprise of. And then we do have an other category, which is a number of other additional classifications that accounted for less than, I think, 4% of the complaints. Happy to answer any questions.
Delphine speaking, and maybe because I'm new in the committee, but what is your main action or behavior as a customer service once you get the complaint? I'm thinking about the passing up or the employee behaviors, those two. What are normally the kind of course of action?
Well, on the customer service side of things, so if we receive a call that an operator passed up a customer, we're going to ask, some probing questions and try to make sure we understand exactly what happened. Where was the customer? Were they at the bus stop? Was the bus crowded? Those kinds of things. We'll document that in our system, and we'll refer that over to bus operations for further handling. So we'll send that over to bus operations so that they can kind of look into it. They may interview an operator, pull a video, that kind of thing. But that's kind of done at the bus operations level.
Do they get back to you after, so you have kind of that documentation, or no? It's not like it's been passed on and it's...
Yeah, I mean, the only information they might pass back to us is that a customer was contacted if a customer wanted to speak to the manager about a situation.
So Delphine, what I would say is there is an effort underway with customer communications, my team, and technology that we are planning on. We'd like to bring on a consultant approval to create a true customer relationship management tool, create a true CRM tool. The hope is to bring it to this most recent board in this month for approval, so that we can begin to work on it, because I think as you're probably alluding to or getting to, you see that as really critically important. And Kate and my team and the IT team do as well. So it is something that we're trying to invest on this year.
Yeah, because then you can judge if your intervention have an impact, right? Yeah,
correct. Yep.
This is Laura. Does customer service track complaints by garage, by station? Because there are times where I've heard from our consumers, some of the bus routes are there are consistent issues, and it's not just one employee. So it seems like there's maybe a training issue, but if it's a management issue, I don't think and the complaints are getting, sent to the manager, I don't know that they're going to report themselves. So I don't know if there's anything that tracks or like flags something, if it's like, oh, we consistently hear that like the buses out of this garage they more often go out with like a ramp that's broken.
We do capture, we do store all that information in our database. So, and we do generate regular reports on the types of complaints and by garage. So I would say like overall, last year, it looks like North Park Garage had the most complaints that we had for ADA. If we're looking at something like the pass-up complaints, that was kind of North Park and 74th Garage. Each had about 29 complaints over the course of the year. So we do have that information, tracked in our system for sure.
I realize this would not be a question as much for you, but for operations, and if something can be passed along of kind of what happened, if there's a procedure, if there's something where it's like, we're noticing an abnormally high number of complaints, for the station, by the garage, by something, like there should be some kind of evaluation and, yeah.
Yes, and we are in conversation with operations on that. One of the things that we're going to change for 2025 is providing in-person training for ADA training during the COVID piece of it. We were doing virtual and Zoom, and that was the area where we've seen the most complaints. And so Irma and I have already discussed ways that we can do that maybe in person so that it's, more real and kind of, there's aspects of it that we can bring into it while we're training new operators, particularly new operators. I don't have the trend whether it's the new operators or the older operators, but I think having that reminder and being in person as part of the training will be helpful. So we're working with training and support to incorporate that piece of the training in person. And so we're looking at ways to kind of change it in various aspects of it. It doesn't address every piece of it, but I think it's us looking at those trends and seeing where are areas where we could probably enhance, and the area we're going to focus on new bus operators. So that is where we see kind of a higher in bus operations, and then also in their refresh. So when an operator does call in the video that's something, that did not deploy the ramp or so forth, then they meet with the person, they do a refresh training. And so I think that our purpose right now is just capture those new operators as they come in so that they have pretty good habits. And then for the older operators that refresh, and we're still thinking through what the best way to address that, but we're partnering with operations so that it's effective. We haven't quite gotten a solution there for that because that conversation's ongoing, but we do want to capture kind of the new operators so they can build good habits as they go out and operate the bus.
That was my question, if you had refresher, because I think we know in ADA and you're like to remind people of their responsibility and what they can do. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's annual, or is that?
The refresh usually, the refresh happens twice. It happens if an incident occurs. So that's required before they go back and operate the bus. And then there's refresher training, but it would be on ADA and various topics. I don't know how frequently it is done. I'm trying to think a year to 2 years, but that includes various topics, including ADA.
Actually, I have a question. Post collecting all of the data, is there any either consideration or talks about altering the grievance procedure that plaintiffs can or not can have to follow?
I'm not sure what procedure you're referring to.
In regards to submitting any type of like accessibility related grievance, there's like a set, like, I guess, what would you call it?
Like tree for questions, like the questions they ask?
Yeah.
Like the form?
Yeah.
So not like the union grievance, but like when you're filing a complaint.
Exactly that.
It's the process that goes through EEO. So Lincoln, it goes through a different process. So if there are, I think Katie said this, if there are accessibility complaints that do come into customer service, those are shared, based on based on what they are shared for additional investigation within CTA, but then there's the separate process through our EEO team, and we can get back to you on that process.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Because I have one again, but. The other thing is, and I'm totally blanking on what it is, but the chat bot, there's a couple things where if you want to have a complaint, there is really not a space in the decision tree. And then if it's like, I don't understand you, it then doesn't let you kind of like go back. So I realize it's probably a hard thing to program around, but then it's like, even if you refresh the site, you can no longer, I don't know, there is, if there's a way to go back, or if there's once you've like realized that decision tree does not work for the complaint you want to file, if there's something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we've noticed that too. And in our testing is that once you go down the tree, you can't kind of go back a step. And, you know, it's something that we hope will be addressed in kind of future deployments. But like right now, the only way to do that is kind of start fresh, start again.
I'm going to call Kara up, VP of Innovation, because Kara works with Kate on this. Kate's the lovely receiver of all this information, but Kara and her team are working on additional development stages.
Hair Reader, back again, white shirt, blue stripes, red hair. So yes, if there are specific flows that you know are definitely problematic, let us know. I think we can think about the logic of those flows. We have a good support partner, and Kate and her team, as well as others, have been really pushing those tickets to try to improve some of the flow. We're also sort of looking at what's next for chatbot overall. So how do we not only widen the number of categories that you can engage on, but make that engagement process more dynamic and kind of just easier to experience. And so we're looking at how we might include sort of generative AI language features so that the chatbot might better parse what you're saying to it in that first initial description and kind of take it from there. I think I admit to being a frequent chatbot user, and that sort of experience where you fully describe your incident and then it's going to start asking you the same questions of information you've already said. It's not always the best. So I think that that's to come with future phases of chatbot. We've worked that out because we want to make sure that once we get your information, we're not pulling you back overall, but thinking about how we carry that through. And then, as Molly said, hopefully integrating that with the future CRM tool. So there's a real record of what did you report, who at CTA acted upon it. Could we share anything back to you about that and confirm you told us that the light was broken? We actually sent it over to Bill's group to send out some maintenance. Bill's staff checked the box off, and then we actually send you back a message that we fixed the light at the red line station.
I'm wondering if either like, if it's like a Salesforce flow, if you could do something where it's like, does this not always offer the option of like, does this not get to your question? Like, do you want to create a new complaint and create like a duplicative ticket to let someone go down a new path, or like at least write in a paragraph so you can like document, here's my issue.
Yeah, like an open-ended sort of submission if that flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could look into that. I think we're hopeful that in the next phase, we actually will be able to broaden and cover like more than 90% of the categories that Kate's team gets in feedback anyway. So I think we're hopeful that after sort of a next phase of work on this, we won't have to have a more open-ended feature. But I think we could talk about and think about in the interim what it might take to just put an open-ended.
Also, if you guys could
this is Doreen, again, MOPD. I'm all for always having an other checkbox and then, you know, briefly describe blah, blah, blah. Even if you cap it off at a number of words, because there's always going to be those instances.
This is Laura, and I guess if you could, if there isn't an open-ended thing, if there's like a map that you or something you could put that showed the the different categories, if it's like consistent and it fixed broken down, because then at least like if you were willing to take the time and you were looking and you could not figure out what things you had to click to get to where your complaint was, then at least you could like just scan down it. So I don't know if you guys could just like put it up on the site. I would find it helpful. I don't know how many people found it helpful, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we can look into it. We're always trying to bridge the gap of like getting people to a report swiftly for the things that are most commonly reported. But then, yeah, people being able to identify where they want to go and need to go and being sufficiently inclusive of the types of issues that we get information on.
Yeah, or even the none of the above, you know, if you're not going to have an open-ended field, if that's completely out of the question, at least having none of the above, and then a representative will contact you regarding this. Or some way to account for that, because right now you can only assume what percentage would not be covered.
Yeah. I think we all look forward to and appreciate you guys kind of.
Chatbot is going to be iterative.
Yes, thank you. That was,
I could tell the words you were looking.
Thank you.
Right.
Any other questions online?
Thank you, Captain.
And with that, thank you to all of the presenters for taking the time and answering our questions. Really appreciate it. And for describing the images that were up there. Next is the facilitators report presented by Irma Gomez, Manager of ADA Compliance Programs.
Thank you, Laura. I wanted to start by taking the time to thank Doreen and Mary for their relentless advocacy work within the ADA Advisory Committee these past 4 years. This is their last meeting, as stated before, as committee members, and I am grateful to both of you for sharing your knowledge and experience with all of us. I have personally learned so much from both of you. So just thank you and make sure that you're not strangers. Furthermore, we have also finished the 2024 ADA Advisory Committee member search. We had over 60 applicants, and I wanted to thank everyone who applied this round for their interest in the committee and dedication to advancing disability advocacy work. It was amazing to read all of the applicants and hearing about all of the disability work that you all do and that is being done, and having dedicated advocates around the city. It was a hard round to narrow it down, but we have chosen 2 new great members that will bring diverse perspectives to this committee, Zoe Lehner and Milton Lash, which are present here today. Thank you for joining us. I'm very excited to have both of you start in this committee and hear all of your experiences and knowledge and be shared here. In other ADA updates, in 2024, I presented a total of 95 disability trainings to our frontline employees, 10 bus familiarization trainings, and 20 community events and fairs. I'm excited to continue to work with our internal and external partners in 2025. And as also said, these trainings for bus will be now in person. Additionally, the Chicago Department of Transportation, CDOT, and the Chicago Transit Authority, CTA, announced the completion of accessibility upgrades at over 100 bus stops citywide in 2024. Upgrades have been made to 200 bus stops since 2022. As part of a broader effort to enhance access and inclusivity for transit users, these upgrades provide safer and easier access for individuals using wheelchairs, strollers, and other mobility devices, making transit more inclusive and convenient, particularly for older adults and people with disabilities. Other highlights in 2024 include 65 new in-lane bus stops throughout the bus stop bump outs and boarding islands. Dedicated space is provided for riders to wait and board and alight safely. Tactile bus stop signs. In August of 2022, the CTA launched a tactile bus stop sign program, adding accessible signage at more than 3,000 stops along bus stop routes across the city. The signs are designed to make stops easier to identify for riders who are blind or low vision, and safety improvements at 400 intersections. Upgrades include shortening pedestrian crossings, median refuge islands, and raised crosswalk improvements, and comfort for people accessing bus stops. In Chicago, most residents travel a half mile or less to reach the nearest bus stop, with walking being the primary mode of access. In other 2024 news, our commitment to deliver more frequent and reliable bus and rail services this year, the CTA celebrated 2 major milestones, two major milestones by training and qualifying of more than 200 new rail operators and hiring of more than 1,000 new bus operators in 2024. which more than 850 have entered service. This news comes on the heels of the winter bus schedule, which went into effect Sunday, December 22nd, and fully restored scheduled bus services to pre-pandemic levels. As Scott mentioned in his presentation, the CTA saw an increase in ridership on routes that have received more service throughout the year. Ridership on routes that already received additional service in 2024 were up 14 to 15% year over year in October, while routes that did not receive service adjustments have also increased, but at a lower rate of 10% during the same period. Looking ahead to 2025, CTA is poised to further improve the rider experience by introducing more frequent bus and rail service, while also exploring innovative tools that improve the customer experience. This includes piloting a service disruption management feature on CTA Bus Tracker to eliminate ghost buses, to the testing of new technologies that expand real-time arrival and alert signage to bus stops. This forward-thinking approach ensures CTA continues to put the customers first and will remain well prepared to handle the unexpected and deliver a modern, reliable transit experience. The CTA remains committed to ongoing improvements and expansions that benefit both riders and employees.
Any questions? Any questions online? Thank you. Thank you, Emma. Now, please.
Does anyone have any old business they'd like to bring up?
Yes, this is Laura. So as Molly referenced, something I presented to I presented to the CTA board, I think over 3 years ago. It's the issue of transit ambassadors. I know that there was $3 million, and we appreciate that the board pushed to get money in the budget, $3 million for quote unquote safety pilots. Want to make sure that there is something that is tangible and that is, if it fits under the security fund, that is something looking at people who are trained to deal with people in crisis versus de-escalation for people in crisis, and where it's, people who are appropriately trained and where it's not a law enforcement response and not a canine response, not people whose primary view of things is security. And I hope that there is something, as you mentioned, coming out in months like tangible services being provided. I know it is not an easy issue, but it is past time. And very grateful that, that there was consistent advocacy to get funding in the budget for that. And an additional thing, and again, viewing this as a disability issue. And the other thing I would note, or that I would ask about, is there's been a push for like senior CSRs. I know that can be complicated for different reasons, but I don't know if there's any updates on that, because I think it being seen as a more serious career option, I think would help ensuring that people with disabilities who are at stations, so these are the people at the stations because they don't make a ton of money, and there's a lot of turnover, and so trying to see if we can get more career position, if that would also help with getting folks to make sure that you can get a gap filler consistently, right? So I don't know if there's been anything there. I wanted to just flag that as something that I think is important.
Yeah, I'll do the $3 million in the 2025 budget. So that was advocated for by the board. That is something that the board, the CTA board is looking for. And so my anticipation is in the next month or so, there'll be additional information provided to the board. And then there'll be engagement with a host of different groups, including the ADA Advisory Board, for feedback on what folks would like to see with the $3 million and what would be that type of advocacy work and something, or the work coming out of it. What I would say that I've heard from all of you and the senior leadership team here understands loud and clear is this can't just be a year of let's talk about what everyone thinks the problem is. I think that we successfully defined the problem for a while. I think now it is time to discuss what's the action. And so I hear that from you. I will continue. I think the rest of the senior leadership team hears that from you all, from other community groups as well. And so the goal is what comes out in 2025 is action. What I will say is, at this point, it is not something that is within the purview of planning and innovation, but it is something that we will continue to advocate for and advocate for your voice, the ADA advisory voice, to be heard in that. And then on The CSA, the senior CSAs are, transitioning from CSAs to CSRs. That it continues to be an open discussion amongst our team as well as with the union leadership. What I would say is with Dorval transitioning and with a new person coming in, that will be another opportunity to raise that particular item there, because that is part of union. That would have to be part of union negotiations.
Thank you.
Any additional comments, questions on old business?
All right, new business. I have something that does anyone have any new they want to, me just talking. So something that I think, again, an issue I appreciate is complicated. And it's not necessarily a new problem, but I think needing to deal with it is this is, at least not viewing this as a security issue. I know other folks do, but as a public health issue, which is like smoking on the trains, it is a public health problem. It keeps people with disabilities from getting on the train or having to leave the train. And so I think if there is something that CTA is planning or looking at addressing it, because it's, and again, this isn't, cigarettes are not new from for 4 years ago, and and it's kind of stuck around. And yeah, so something that like looking at trying to deal with that.
Yeah, I think smoking is another one of those that it is a very complicated issue. It's very hard to address. And, we continue to have conversations internally about how to effectuate. We've talked a lot about the chatbot today, but how would have thought we did a full chatbot briefing, but with the chatbot, how we effectuate not just complaints coming in, but how do we start to activate those to try to address the issue. We have found in some scenarios that we've been able to have a staff and been able to have a rail operator in a position when they make announcements, hey, there's no smoking on the train, or even sometimes when there's interdiction, we see really good response from riders who have reported the issue, and from even on social media, people saying, hey, I saw somebody was smoking, there was a complaint, and I heard the operator make an announcement, or I heard CTA taking action. So that's something that we're going to look to see if we can expand that further in 25. It does require a lot of resources and investment to make, but that is something that we are looking to do, and understanding that what we hear from our riders is smoking is one of the biggest complaints that they have that makes them feel unsafe. And I think it's even more complex issue because it is not just a security issue. To your point, it's a public health issue as well. And we've actually heard in our focus groups, we heard from a woman who said she doesn't smoke, but she shows up to work smelling like smoke because she's on the train and she worries about how her boss perceives her. And so this has really become, I think, a multifaceted issue that isn't just a stop somebody smoking on the train because you shouldn't be smoking on the train. There's a lot of adverse effects and knock-on effects. So that is a long way of saying, yes, we hear you. We've started to do some action already, and there's ongoing conversations to see what we can be more active about. And what I would say is, continuing to raise these items and continuing to push us on it is important. And I hope to have some more updates in April. Is that our next meeting? In April.
Any other new business? We're done. And yes, so the next meeting date and time is Monday, April 7th, 2025. So hope we have some updates by then. No pressure. So with that, if I can get a motion to adjourn. Anyone? Lincoln's motioned. If I can get a second.
Second.
Zoe has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain? And with that, we have it. Motion is adjourned. And the time is 3:30.